Welcome to the Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast. My name is Paul DeLigro, your host, and my guest today is John Hannum. He's the president and CEO of PPS Solutions. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Yeah, glad you could make it. Well, before we even get started, is that the Titanic behind you?
It is the Titanic behind me, the rigging diagram, as well as a little model that I put together at some point. I don't remember when.
Very cool.
I've always been very interested in it. It's such a kind of a story of a great plan that didn't quite go as planned. You know, probably everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. So I look at the rigging diagram as pretty excellent. People spent a lot of hours and time on that and plan, and it was perfect for its day, and it operated perfectly, and it's still at the bottom of the ocean. So when I named my company, I named it People Process Systems for a reason, and the Titanic is kind of a failure of all three of those things and a good tale.
Yeah, they still haven't. Well, there's a lot of theories out there of what caused it to sink. Obviously, hitting an iceberg didn't help, but there were some other reasons that it just hitting the iceberg, it should not have sunk.
Yeah, multiple system failures. I mean, from design to material, it could have been a lot of different things that contributed. But the plan was that any one of those things could have been overcame, I guess. Yeah. And it was not. It's still all at the bottom of the ocean, perfect systems and all.
Yeah. No. So, well, cool. I always like to get into a little, look into people's back. What's clipping? I don't even know what that means. Well, it's the same mic I always use, and it always seemed to have worked well.
Sorry.
Well, we'll just go on. You can just cut that out. See, how's that? So I guess we'll get going. The subject of the day, John. I love talking about personal items with people because it get a little feel for who you are and what makes you tick and all that. But you are you're a CEO of a company, but you're a fractional CFO. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, my background is CFO, operational CFO in operating companies. So, kind of full contact finance, growing companies into 100, 200, 300 million, $2.8 billion companies. And now I started a company in 2020 that helps small business kind of take advantage of that level of finance. So we provide fractional CFO services.
Yeah, explain what a fractional CFO is for the people. I think by definition, I think we should be able to figure that out. But what's your definition of a fractional CFO?
So a fractional CFO is a CFO, somebody that has experience in finance, running companies, all of the things that it takes to run a company from a financial perspective. But they do that on a fractional basis, and that could be part-time, for example. You could employ somebody part-time that's a fractional CFO. You might have a consultant that comes in for a certain number of hours. That's a fractional CFO. Or, in our case, we do a subscription model. So you kind of have access to a fractional CFO for a smaller price than, hiring somebody that's, that really wants a kind of ridiculous salary and still a bonus that gets them a BMW every year. So, we do that on a subscription basis. And I think that's an interesting model. But the idea of a CFO is that they run the finance department. So they might give you financial planning and analysis, budgeting, accounting, all of the things to keep your finances in order and give you financial strategy. And sticking the word fractional in front of it just means they do it part-time or on a subscription basis.
Yeah, I think, as I'm thinking about this and people that I know that have small companies and are growing companies, there's a big need for guys like you and COOs, I think. because, when the owners get to a point where they say, wait a sec, I can't do it all anymore. And they've got but it's that chasm of, who do I hire? Do I hire a full-time employee that wants, a big salary and BMWs, like you said, or do I hire someone on a part-time basis? So I know it's a tough decision. I mean, what are you seeing out there? I mean, what are the deciding factors to make someone hire a fractional, like a CFO or even a COO for that matter?
Well, one of the reasons I like to be, on shows like yours is to educate people that we exist. So what I see is that people use resources that they have available to them, like their CPA. And your CPA is great for taxes and financial acumen. You're going to get great answers out of them, but they haven't really done the CFO job before. So what I see is companies use their gut, the entrepreneur's gut, to make decisions. And then, they might include some other people in that gut later, their banker, their CPA, their bookkeeper, and they use these resources kind of as a crutch to fractional CFO because they don't know that we exist. And at some point, the bookkeeper has tapped out their strategy, and the CFO or the CPA, has given all the tax advice and, doesn't really have the answer. So hopefully at some point they realize there is a fractional CFO that can help them on a part-time basis. As early in the process as they can do that, in my opinion, is better because you're going to get that strategy that you would be missing with those other pieces that can probably get you through the crunches. I think you recognize, though, when it ultimately happens that you should hire a full-time person because your bookkeeper is stressed out, pulling out their hair. You're been denied for a loan. The Rome is burning from a financial perspective. And that's really where we get brought in most of the time. And it makes me very sad because there doesn't have to be a crisis for a fractional CFO to really be valuable to a small company.
Right. I would venture to guess a lot of small companies probably go the CPA route or a bookkeeper route and think that's a CFO.
They certainly, it fills the financial void, right? So if you start having questions, like, should I make this investment or that investment? Should I do this or that? Should I hire this person? And what's that going to mean? Number one, it probably means that you're not doing your budgeting and planning, right? You don't have a budget that you can kind of play with and say, okay, if I did these, if I made these decisions, what would happen to the finances of the company? You don't have somebody you can do that with. And the CPA is the natural person to do that with. They may be able to help and they may be able to actually add some real good value there, but a fractional CFO fits perfectly into that space, right?
Right.
You should have a budget. You should have a forecast. You should kind of know what your future is going to be, and you should be marking yourself against that forecast on a monthly basis, reviewing your numbers for usefulness, right? The numbers aren't just to go into the tax return every year. They really are useful to help you run your business every month.
Yep.
So the fractional CFO can help you sit down, make that budget, and look at the budget and see what it does to your operations each time you each time you close a period.
So what? If a company goes out and says, I'm going to look for a CFO, a fractional CFO, what are the qualities they look for?
Well, I get this question a lot, and it's very interesting. You have to know, like, and trust that person, and I wouldn't discount any one of those things. You have to know them, right? Are they a trustworthy person? Are they a CFO? Are they, do they have the qualifications and the education, the background, the experience, whatever it is that you value in your CFO? The second one is kind of interesting too, because you have to like them. If you don't like talking to your CFO, if you just kind of dread that conversation, you're not going to call them very much and you're not going to get very much good financial advice. So, you should really pick the person that you like the best, with the qualifications, ultimately, to work with, because then you'll actually work better with them in the end. And then trust. Trust is really the last step, and it's the longest to solidify in that relationship. But you're going to be talking about really kind of intimate things with this person. You're going to be talking about your business and your finances and your hopes and your dreams and your uncertainties, your fears, all those things. It's almost like a psychology relationship, or, some type of therapist relationship.
Yeah.
You have to trust them as well. And so that it takes time to build that. And so those three things, know, like, and trust, are really the basis for a good CFO relationship. You can find
Yeah,
them
I'd,
almost
I'd
anywhere.
agree with that, John. I'm certainly not a CFO, but being in a sales role all these years, that's exactly what you just said is exactly what I say. Customers have to know you, like you, and trust you
Very
before
true.
they'll, maybe not at the beginning, they'll try you out a little bit, but over time to continue that relationship, you've got to have all those three.
I mean, if you're just buying a widget from somebody, you have to know that the widget is okay and have be relatively certain that the return policy is okay. When you're actually having this relationship of an entrepreneur and a CFO, know, like, and trust goes to a whole different level. It's like your doctor. You don't want to go to your doctor and tell them, you're experiencing symptoms that are different than what they actually are. You have to be truthful in order to get the right advice.
Yeah. So, obviously when, people think of CFOs, they think of financials, right? But beyond financials, what's the strategic value of an experienced CFO, beyond just, the basic things and looking long term?
Well, there certainly has to be the basics, right? We have to have good accounting, and we have to, do some level of financial planning and analysis, figure out the things we're going to look at as a business and report on those, see how we're doing against what we expected. The key really is, though, when you approach anything in business, having somebody that's seen that before or that's been through that situation before, they can come up with some interesting ideas on how to tackle that challenge. And that can really go for anything. I do a lot of diligence work right now as well. So I advise people that are buying companies. And because I, as a CFO, have bought and sold companies over the years, done roll-up strategy in several different industries, I've seen a lot of acquisitions. So, they always ask, have you seen this before? Yes. I have a deal that's kind of, right at the last minute, there's some uncertainty, there's some cold feet, almost like getting married. Is this normal? Yes, it's normal. You just need to figure out if it's still what you want. If you want, go ahead and get married. If you don't, there's an out in your purchase agreement, and you don't have to do this, but it really is your choice. And here are the financial implications of that. So, just in general, CFOs have been there and done that. And it's not that they have a magic template to give you to say, here is the answer. It's about having a partner that helps you find the answer for you.
Right. And are there different, I kind of think I know the answer to this, but I'm not going to ask it. At what stage should someone bring in a CFO in the growth of their company? Now, you're going to probably say earlier the better, obviously, but sometimes that's not realistic, right? Just based in finance, the finances available. But what are your thoughts on that? And I guess more specifically, where do you see your fit in the customers that you work with?
Well, I would say that you answered the question with the question and saying when you can afford it, right? When the finances are available, you should allocate some over to strategy. Most companies obviously start with a shoestring budget and they're, invest your life savings in it, and you shouldn't spend your first couple $1,000s on strategy, because that's just not the way it should work. But let's say that you have a well-capitalized company, right? You've got some investment money or some seed money, and you want to set it up for success, and you can afford a CFO from the beginning. That's great. You should absolutely have somebody. And I know that there's a lot of people that specifically, I do a lot with acquisitions, but there are a lot that specifically do startups. So, if you raise money and have responsibility to those shareholders, going through that without a CFO is probably a little bit silly. But for the entrepreneur that, sinks their life savings into something and starts it, go with the people that you trust, find people. I consult with some people that I know that have businesses that are friends, and, they get a little bit of that for free. Take the resources you can get. But as you have the ability, as you have some level of profitability every month, every year, I think it's really smart to put somebody in, even on a super abbreviated basis, whatever the smallest slice of CFO you can put in your company, because it's going to help you. The way that I always think about CFOs, a good CFO will always pay for themselves. It may not be in direct cost reduction. It may be in growth and strategy and risk avoidance or a lot of other ways. But every single CFO that I know will always focus on making the value in the company so that the company can afford them. Will return some exponent of value to that company. And that's the way we always operate.
Yeah, very nice. And on a personal note, John, what Where do you feel most comfortable? Like your business, what type of companies are you going after?
So my background, I started in the tire industry with a retailer that was then acquired by a wholesaler and manufacturer, private label manufacturer. So I've got a lot of retail and manufacturing in my background. Went into construction and sourcing. So spent a few years in China, back and forth to China with a bunch of factories. So I'm very comfortable with companies that make things. So construction, manufacturing,
Sure.
Home service, people that are actually doing something. I probably wouldn't personally be as familiar with things like film and television production, which is huge
Sure.
here in Los Angeles. Healthcare, just a number of things that SaaS, right? This doesn't make any sense to me how you can have a $1 billion valuation for a company that doesn't make any money for 20 years. These things are foreign to me. I like companies that make something. The good news is that for every industry, there is a CFO. So, what we want to do, whereas I could service companies that make something really well, I want to put in CFOs that service their industry. So we'd have a healthcare CFO that services healthcare and film and television, people that are here in Los Angeles. Very, it's a good niche to be in. They can help smaller film and television companies to grow. It really is about understanding that industry. So, whereas most firms, a single person would niche, my plan is to actually grow this by putting in multiple CFOs that service different industries. And the CFOs on my staff kind of service industries that are adjacent to mine that I wouldn't understand quite as well.
Sure.
So that's our plan.
I think that's a great strategy, John. You know your strengths, right? And you may not be an expert in one field, but you have people that work for you that do.
That's very true. And the finance is everywhere. There's not a company it doesn't touch. So we're going to try and really marry those two together. I don't think that a healthcare CFO would do very well in a film and television environment, for example. So, we wouldn't want to mismatch those strengths.
So, John, when you're looking at a company and again, there's so many different facets to the financial part of a company, right? There's budgeting and forecasting. Do you get involved in those type of things on the sales side of things? I'm a sales guy, so that's kind of where I'm going with this. Is that part of what you do as well?
We do. So the budget and plan, the financial forecasts, cash flow forecasts, those are all kind of interrelated, and they start with revenue. So every piece of that has to have some basis. If we as CFOs go into a dark room and bring out a budget and say, this is the budget for the company, it doesn't do very well because, we've created that without any assumptions, without any input from operations, sales, anybody else. If operations goes into a dark room, or if the salespeople go into a dark room and send out a budget that's a sales budget, it's not related to operations. It's it may or may not be attainable because salespeople sometimes, have a they have a rosier view or a darker view of the world.
Yeah.
In general, it takes the entire team to make a budget. So we work with sales, we work with operations to make sure that we have a good budget. We align those things together and see what the company is going to do naturally from a kind of a bottom-up budget. And then we kind of tweak it and make some different assumptions to see how profitability changes as it gets more refined. And we try and make those changes to make it more profitable and, even more lucrative for the sales team. We kind of devise maybe different compensation programs. There's a lot that can come out of a budget. But the CFO is kind of the center of that, taking inputs from everybody. And I don't think you could do it without a good CFO.
You really got me thinking. That's why I'm kind of smiling here, because being on the sales side all these years, when we see budgets and quotas come out, as a sales guy, we're always saying, how did they come up with these numbers? Did they just,
yes,
put their thumb up in the air and figure it out? Because we've never been able to figure it out on the sales side of things. I can tell you that.
Well, if you haven't been involved in the creation of that, then, they went into a dark room to do it. So that just doesn't serve anybody very well. Now, there's the idea that we want to challenge the sales team. So we're going to, if you give us an easy number to make the budget and to make the commission, then, we're going to come back with a different number, to challenge and to hopefully reward a little bit better. And that's why, your compensation strategy should be tied to your budget and, vice versa, so that you can actually reward people for doing the things that you want them to do in the company. But to just toss a number at a salesperson and say, here, you have to hit this, if it's not attainable, what are you going to do? Not attain it.
Yeah. Well, I know what happens, just if sales guys aren't hitting the number and making money, one of two things are going to happen. Either they're going to get fired or they're going to quit. And no one wins on that one.
No, that's correct. Yeah. You have to work collaboratively with the sales team in order to have a sales budget that's going to be achievable.
Yeah. No. So, as you're consulting with companies, I mean, where do you see the common financial pitfalls most companies make, and how do you avoid them?
So most of those can be avoided, and there's a ton of pitfalls, right? Most are related to the fact that they don't have visibility going forward. So they're going to make strategic decisions that they probably shouldn't if they knew what was coming down the pike. They're going to invest in something that uses up all their cash, and then they're not going to have that cash to pay payroll, right? Okay. You're insolvent. There's a problem. You're gonna make a decision about expanding into an area that you didn't do the right competitive analysis on, and you lose that investment. There's a lot that can happen in business, and having a roadmap and a plan makes it a little bit more certain that you've at least thought of the pitfalls.
Sure.
So I think the biggest pitfall is not thinking of the pitfalls. There's not one thing that happens to each business that makes it fail. There's a different thing that happens 1,000,000 times to 1,000,000 businesses, and it makes each one fail. So thinking about the future, putting together a budget, making that budget into a cash flow forecast, and then looking at that cash flow forecast to see if there's any negatives where you might need liquidity, et cetera, or any super positives. That's the magic of avoiding business pitfalls, is kind of to think about them and plan for them.
Yeah.
Sounds simple, but it isn't.
Yeah. And what are the common metrics for success? Like, how do you measure success? I mean, it can be a number of different things, but I know obviously, revenue outpaces, expenses, right? That's a simple arithmetic equation there, but how do you measure success? And you tied into it a little earlier, justifying your position. A company goes out and hires you on a fractional basis, and, you've got to justify your position. And if the company's growing under your guidance, then that's an easy one. But what are your thoughts on that, the metrics?
So every business has a different metric, and you could probably boil them down across all business to 4 or 5 metrics, and they're all related to the P&L or the balance sheet. They're related to profitability at different levels, solidity of the balance sheet, equity, et cetera. So those are kind of basic metrics. What I would say for success, and it's funny because in our value statement, our mission is to support the entrepreneur's vision of success. Now, I don't know many entrepreneurs that don't have a vision of success that includes more profitability and more money. So, there's a correlation there.
Sure.
But it could really be anything. Giving more to charity or supporting a number of people. It could really be anything, and you want to build the plan to do that vision of success. And I always think of kind of a contracting industry. If you think about Blockbuster, for example, the video store, right? Blockbuster was super, super, valuable, huge sales all the time. And of course, the industry changed right from underneath them. So, in the last years of Blockbuster, you might actually have outpaced the market and still done pretty well with your budget, even though sales were less than last year and liquidity was tight, all of these different things, because you knew what the vision of success was. The vision of success was to collapse without losing the entire value of the company or to repivot into something else. That's why I think about, it's not, the vision of success isn't always just making more money than last year. It could be shifting into something that's new. Oil companies now, I noticed Shell is got they both do hydrogen, because I was driving a hydrogen car for a while. And there was a Shell electric station the other day that I passed.
Yeah.
Great pivot, right?
Yep. No, you have to. I think this whole, oil industry is, I think to just flip a switch today to say we're not using oil and gas anymore is a little bit naive, but doesn't mean you can't start planning for the future, right? You can't. Yeah. It took us hundreds of years to get to this point. We're not going to get off oil and gas overnight, but it's good to have a plan going forward to transition, right?
Yeah, but that's that vision of success. Obviously, Shell has 7,000 CFOs, and they go into a room and make a budget that's pretty detailed. But whatever it is in your industry that's going on, if it's consolidation, if it's growth, you have to kind of plan for what your industry should expect. If you just say, I'm going to grow 20% per year, and that's your plan, and you're in an industry that's shrinking 5% a year, you're not going to do very well.
Yeah. Well, you got me really thinking about Blockbuster. That's a great example of, think about how 20 years ago, call it, you'd go to a Blockbuster or any one of those video stores on a Friday night, there'd be 50 people in there getting videos for the weekend. And they probably thought they were the king of the hill. And then when streaming came on, Netflix really kind of pioneered that, I think. Once that started happening, boy, they died a quick death.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought? And Netflix was kind of regarded as, well, that's not really going to work. So, Redbox was doing it by mail. There's a lot of moving parts in that. I think it's funny that the last Kmart closed this week in the Hamptons. I think it's funny that the last Kmart was in the Hamptons.
Yeah, of all places, right?
Yeah.
I'm surprised they even had a Kmart there, to be honest with you.
It shocked me.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So, well, this is a fun conversation, John. I learned a lot today, and hopefully anyone out there that needs some help can give you a ring, because I think there's a big need for what you do. I really do, because I know so many people with small companies that struggle with that aspect of the business.
Well, we would love to help them. Even if you're not within the kind of the category and qualifications for the CFO service, which is not. It's super cheap, but obviously it's more expensive than CPA or nothing. So, there's that. I would say, though, that I love answering questions for business. One of the reasons that I like being on podcasts and talking about CFO services, business, growth, valuation, et cetera. So anybody that wants to from your podcast, I'm happy to answer your questions. I think you'll put your my email and website in the show notes. So, I take a lot of meetings. I take a lot of calls from people that just ask questions. By asking questions, we learn about your business. If we can help you, we can help you directly. But I always love helping people, so I'm very happy to answer questions.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great strategy, John. I really do, because too many people are tired of like a lawyer. Like every time I talk to you, it's, you're on the clock versus, hey, we do the same thing with our customers. I think your strategy is the same. We invest in our customers. So when we have initial calls, we don't say, well, you're going to pay us for our time. We're like, hey, we're going to invest in you. Happy to help. And if it works out, that's great. And if not, maybe down the road, we can help as well. So I think our strategies are pretty similar.
Yeah. And I think it does. Small business is the engine that drives this economy, that drives this world. So to me, helping that, I used to, at 4.5 years I've been doing this, and it was a definite shift from large business to small business, but it gives me so much happiness to help small business achieve its goals.
Yeah, and that what life's all about, John, right, is getting up every day and feeling good about yourself and your efforts and the people you work with.
And hopefully we all make money along the way.
Yeah, that greases all the skids, right?
It does.
So great. Well, John, really enjoyed having you on today. Thanks for being on the show, and looking forward to, I always tell people, now that you've been a guest on my show, we're friends now, right?
Excellent.
That's the one thing I'll say about doing these podcasts. I've made so many friends all over the world, and it's been a great experience.
I like the fact that your background has your personality in it as well. So we vibe together on that as well.
There you go. Well, that's, I guess we'll end on that, John. That's a wrap for the Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast. This is Paul Deligro signing off till next time.